Welcome to week 39, mamas. I know you guys are so ready to deliver this baby, to hold this newborn in your arms, and I am so excited for you. In this video, we are going to talk about how your baby is doing, what you would expect at your next appointment, including what it means when they check your cervix, and so much more. But first, if you're new here, my name is Diana. You're watching In the Pink, and if you're new here, In the Pink means in good health and spirit. So if you like being healthy and happy, click subscribe because you are in the right place. So 39 weeks pregnant. The baby might come any day now. He or she weighs around 7 or 8 pounds, give or take, and is anywhere from 19 to 21 inches. At this point, all of their organs are fully functioning. There's no difference in complication rates if your baby were to be born today or if they were to be born in another week. The question for you now is, well, when will that happen? You are only a week away from your due date now, but your due date is only an estimated delivery date. Only about 5% of women actually deliver on their exact due date. So your baby could come today, or they could wait for another few weeks. Now, I know you are probably super uncomfortable right now. You're achy, you're not sleeping well, you might have sharp pains in your groin. We call that lightning crotch. You could have back pain. So you really might be thinking the sooner the better at this point. Or you might be feeling patient and you want to let the baby cook for as long as the baby needs. A lot of this is just being patient. But let's talk about what some of your options are at this point. You can talk to your OB about doing an elective induction. Now, most hospitals and OBs won't allow for an elective induction until 39 weeks. So you are good to go. It is important to know that labor might be a little harder with an induction, and there might be a higher chance of having to have a C-section as well. So if this is something that you were thinking about doing, talk to your OB or midwife to see if you are a good candidate for an induction. And a lot will depend on your baby and your cervix and your body. Now, if you're planning on having a C-section, usually they will be scheduled for this at 39 weeks because it's better to have the C-section scheduled rather than wait for you to go into labor naturally. This helps reduce the risks of the C-section itself. Now, at your next appointment, your OB will probably do what's called a cervical check. Now, if you haven't had a cervical check yet, let's talk about what that is and what they are looking for. Because not only will your OB likely check your cervix at your next appointment, when you go into labor, your nurse or OB will check your cervix at the hospital too. And when they do, I want you to know what they're doing and what it means. To do a cervical check, your OB will put on a glove and put their fingers inside your vagina to feel your cervix.
Are you kidding me?
They will check for dilatation, effacement, and what the station is. Now, the cervix is at the bottom part of your uterus, and it's like a thick donut, and it's usually closed, but as labor approaches, it starts to open or dilate, and they use their fingers to measure how dilated your cervix is.
I can't believe this.
And they measure it in centimeters. Now, you can be a 1 or 2, even 3 centimeters dilated and not be in labor. But when you do go into active labor, the cervix will continue to dilate, and the goal is for you to be fully dilated at a 10 or 10 centimeters dilated for you to push the baby out. The next thing I want to talk about is effacement. Now, when you are not pregnant, your cervix is usually pretty thick, 4 to 4.5 inches thick. But as you go into labor, and even a little bit before labor, your cervix starts to get thinner and thinner. Now, we talk about effacement in terms of percentage. So a fully effaced cervix is 100% effaced, and a cervix that is still its full regular length that hasn't thinned at all is 0% effaced. So if your cervix is halfway effaced, maybe 2 centimeters thick instead of the normal 4, then they will say that you are 50% effaced. As the cervix dilates, the cervix also becomes more and more effaced, and when you are at a 10 centimeters and 100% effaced, the baby is ready to be born. Now, the third thing that they measure is station, and this refers to how far the baby has descended into your pelvis. So when they are checking your cervix, they are also feeling for a landmark inside your pelvis called the ischial spines. That's also called the sit bones. And they use that to judge how far down the baby is. So if the baby is right at the level of the spines, they are a 0 station. And each centimeter down towards the outside gets a +1. So 1 centimeter towards the outside is a +1, and then 2 centimeters is a +2, and then so on. +4 is out. Basically, your baby is delivered. Also, you can have negative numbers. So if the head is 1 centimeter above the spines, the station is -1. And then, of course, -2 and -3. If you are 6 centimeters dilated and you are 80% effaced and the baby is 1 centimeter below the level of the spines, when your nurse or OB checks you, they will say that you are a 6, 80, and -1. So that's what they mean when they say the numbers after you were checked. Just be aware that when they check your cervix, it might be a little bit uncomfortable. So when they tell you they're gonna do a cervical check, take a few deep breaths, relax, because if you tighten up, which is kind of our natural instinct, that makes the cervical check a little bit more uncomfortable. So relax.
Don't tell me to relax.
Just a couple of reminders. Make sure at this point that you do have your hospital bags packed and ready to go.
Guys, this way. Come on, Bruiser.
Check your rings. If your rings feel even a little bit tight, I recommend that you take them off until after the baby is born. You can develop swelling in your hands, especially if you have to have a lot of IVs, and that can make those rings really, really tight. We don't want you to have your ring cut off at the hospital because they're cutting off your circulation. Be sure to rest as much as you can right now, and if you have other children, make sure that you've made arrangements to have someone ready to come over when it is time for you to go to the hospital. And also, if possible, have someone help you after you come home while you are recovering. At this point, make sure that you are watching for the soft signs of labor. Now, I've talked a lot about that in much more detail on my pregnancy week 36, 37, and 38 video, so be sure to check that out. But just to recap, the soft sign of labors, you lose your cervical mucus plug, you might see a bloody show, baby dropping, or we call this lightning, where the baby drops lower into the pelvis, or you might notice increased Braxton Hicks. So if you see any of these signs, it doesn't mean go to the hospital, but it does mean that labor might be just around the corner. Also note that if your water breaks, even if you're not in labor, that means it's time to go to the hospital. If you start noticing contractions and you're not sure if those contractions are just Braxton Hicks or if you're actually experiencing active labor, pay attention to them, start to time them. Real labor contractions are going to become more intense, more frequent over time. If you are feeling like you can't keep doing what you're doing through a contraction, like you have to stop and breathe through the contraction, that's also a sign that, hey, you know what? Things are starting to happen and you might be in actual labor. And hey, if you're ever not sure if you're in labor or if you are not, just call your OB. That's what they're there for. They're happy to check you if you need to be checked or give you direction on if it's time to go to the hospital or not. I am so excited for you. And many of you have been updating me throughout your pregnancies. You've been watching this week by week series, and I have loved reading about your experiences. And also, if you have delivered your baby, don't worry, I'm still going to continue bringing you videos about the postpartum period, how to heal from that, common postpartum issues, as well as other female health issues. So if you are new to Dianainthepink, hit the subscribe button and remember to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified of all of my future videos. And hey, if you know somebody else who's pregnant, share my pregnancy series with them as well. It might help them as they walk through their pregnancy week by week. And I will put a link to that pregnancy series right here. Click on that and I will see you over there. By now, your baby's lanugo, which is that fine hair that they developed early in the second trimester to help keep them warm, has mostly fallen off, although they might still have some on their shoulders, or on their back, or on their arms, sometimes on their baby's cheeks.